Let me just take a minute also to introduce our second speaker who will come after the first speaker. This is the culture talk, and this will be given by Lucia von Bredow. Lucia is the manager of EMBL's Science and Society program, which is based in its Germany, site in Germany. She's been the manager of the Science and Society program since 2012, but the program has been in existence for over 20 years, where it's been working to facilitate exchange surrounding the social impact of scientific research. Her major interests are in the field of bioethics, and in fact, she was trained as a commercial and international business lawyer at the universities of Exeter and the University of Vienna, where she carried out research on the impact of intellectual property rights on access to medicines. In 2017, she was a Churchill Fellow, and there she extended her studies to examine patient entrepreneurship in North America. I also want to point out, and I think she will tell us about this, that the EMBL Science and Society program each year hosts a major conference, and this year it will be held on November 4th and 5th, and it's entitled Our House is Burning, and Lucia will tell you more about that. The title of Lucia's talk is Science and Society at EMBL, Facilitating Dialogue on the Ethical, Legal, and Social Implications of Scientific Research.
Perfect. Can you just see the screen or the whole page, or what can you see?
We can just see your slide.
Okay, perfect. Right, so thank you, Janet, for that fascinating talk. It's quite an act to follow, actually. And thank you also to the organisers of this series for the opportunity to now talk about our Science and Society programme. So we're going to explore these 6 topics in the presentation today. It'll be a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the programme, but it will hopefully give you a real flavour for the kind of work that we do. I should also say that all the pictures on the left of the screen are all posters of past Science and Society events. And in order to go through these 6 topics, I really want to start with the why, our purpose, and then go into the what, the programme scope, and then the how, to explore the kind of tools we have and the mechanisms we use to facilitate dialogue. So I'd then like to share some insights into potential challenges that this programme has and outline how I think we can mitigate against those issues. And also I'd be keen to hear from you on your views on that, whether within this session or after the event. And it's correct, Cornelius introduced me, the programme has indeed been running for over 20 years. It was actually created by my predecessor in this role, but I have a slight correction. I actually started about 18 months ago, not in 2012, but I was lucky to inherit a really well-established and wide-reaching programme. And I have been tasked since I started to think about considering the future of dialogue at an intergovernmental organisation. And I'd like to share some of those plans with you. So finally, I'd like to touch on really a bit of a case study of Science and Society in action, if you will, via the upcoming conference, Our House is Burning. So let's start with the why, the purpose of the programme. Our vision is to create a platform for dialogue and debate, really to allow EMBL to examine the ethical, legal and social implications, known as ELSI, of scientific research. We mainly focus on 5 key themes, on ethics, technology, data, people and planet, and we run internal activities to analyse each of those themes and their impact on the life sciences. We also deliver outreach initiatives, enabling multidisciplinary external dialogue through a variety of engagement activities. So as you know, EMBL is an intergovernmental organisation. We have 27 member states and we operate across 6 sites in Europe. We also have more than 80 independent research groups covering a real spectrum of molecular biology. So that gives us an incredible diversity of research, of nationalities and of cultures. And for me, really, I find it's an environment fizzing with new ideas from staff all over the world. So we're really privileged to not only have a really motivated, diverse staff who are really interested in the ethical, legal and social implications that their research has on society, but we also live in a time when the public have a greater desire to understand more about what it is that we do at EMBL, or perhaps they just have better tools to allow them to do that. And I would, suggest it's probably a bit of both. So our goal, quite simply, is to create a bridge between EMBL and society. We work with external stakeholders and with cross-sectoral experts, and really to take an analysis, undertake an analysis of and a discussion on the societal impact of scientific research. So with the support of our internal Science and Society Committee, we have representatives across our sites who are part of that committee. They act as EMBL's internal think tank, and we run a range of internal and external events to facilitate outreach on scientific issues with a societal relevance. It's a bit of a tongue twister. So this process establishes a vehicle for scientists and experts from a variety of disciplines, really, to meet with members of the public, to engage in dialogue via seminars, via discussion meetings, conferences and symposia. And it also allows our researchers additional insight into how society is impacted by scientific research. So for me, the cornerstones of this program really are the internal insight and analysis piece, translated into public outreach and dialogue, and finally captured and analysed by the process of measuring impact. So now to the what of the program, the scope, and I can appreciate this might all seem a bit abstract, so this will hopefully fill in some gaps. I've mentioned already that we have 5 key themes, but these are by no means exhaustive, so please bear that in mind. I suppose it's more to give you an idea of how vast the potential scope of the Science and Society program is. So firstly, ethics. I mean, clearly this includes research ethics, bioethics, and animals and research. Perhaps they're the more obvious themes that might come up, but also things such as EMBL culture, equality, research integrity, and so on. Then for technology, this program probably focuses mainly on emerging technologies, and you can see a past event poster on the left there. These sort of events might include Black Mirror style scenario planning, assessing the technology, looking at potential availability, perhaps applicability to Europe or more specifically to EMBL, and so on. On the data side, that might include data privacy and data protection, biobanks, data management, archive, and of course, open science, which was the last EMBL culture talk. So for people, this is probably the largest group of topics. It includes issues like philosophy of science, religion, societal movements such as anti-vax, public trust in science, public involvement in science, and so on. And finally, planet. Issues of loss of biodiversity, climate change, etc. And as Cornelius mentioned, this will be the subject of our flagship event, which I will be talking about at the end of this seminar. So finally, I come to the how of the program. What tools, what mechanisms do we use to facilitate dialogue on the LC, on the ethical, legal, and social implications of scientific research? You can see here that I've split them into internal and external engagement, but in truth, they often overlap. Most, in fact, the majority of our events are open to the public and free, in particular seminars, symposia, and conferences. They're all free to attend apart from the conferences, which have a small fee, and some, like the ELS modules, and ELS is our EMBL, European Learning Laboratory for the Life Sciences, are targeted at a specific stakeholder group, in that case, high school students. So I'd like to do more of this really tailored stakeholder engagement by group, and I'll explain in a moment how I think that really is the future of dialogue in the scientific research sector. So here are some examples of previous events. On the left here, we've got an EMBL, EBI, Science and Society event at the Cambridge Union in 2015 on the issue of pandemics, quite fittingly, and the global threat of deadly diseases. And we had expert speakers working on pathogen evolution, genetics, and immunology. In the center, we've got the ELS module we just spoke about, and we're actually in the process of updating that module at the moment. And on the right here, we've got an example of an internal only discussion meeting. In this case, it's about reproducibility in science. And I thought I would quickly also mention a special seminar series we've got running at the moment, focusing on the theme of infectious disease and society. So this seeks to explore the scientific and societal impact of infectious diseases and, not only COVID, the COVID-19 pandemic from a number of different angles, such as the public health angle, psychology of pandemics, the open science angle, but also a variety of other infectious diseases such as salmonella and malaria. So I'd urge you to look at what we have coming up, and we put talks online as soon as they're complete. The next talk in this series is on the environmental impact of COVID-19. So really, it's been a great example of being able to be reactive and to organize something pretty quickly and to get access to some world-leading experts in a particular field. So I've got to have a special mention also for the Heidelberg Forum. As you can see, we've had some really eminent speakers in the 20+ year history. And the Heidelberg Forum is a collaboration between 3 leading research institutes in Heidelberg, clearly EMBL, but also DKFZ, the German Cancer Research Center, and the University of Heidelberg. And our vision for this group really, it's local engagement, and it's to create a forum for cross-sectoral dialogue on the greatest challenges affecting humanity. We connect experts with members of the academic community in Heidelberg and explore solutions to the most pressing issues of our time. So in this way, we hope to facilitate scientific outreach while simultaneously giving scientists impact and insight into the impact that their research has on society. And these are all freely available to anyone who wishes to attend. And the audience, I suppose, has a particular focus on the academic and academically interested community in Heidelberg. Participants range from undergraduate level to senior academic staff, and we aim to include subject areas across the life and the social sciences. So the goal really for this kind of venture is to build an open collaborative platform, to share ideas, to spark debate, and we really encourage that interdisciplinary discussion, and also to provide an opportunity for participants to meet the experts at the end of each seminar, which for me is a really important aspect of the sessions. So now that I've explored the core principles of the program, I thought I would share some practical, sometimes philosophical challenges that the program presents. We are an impartial forum, so we do not seek to take sides. And does that mean that we have to give all sides a seat at the table, even if they're anti-science? Personally, my gut feeling is to say that in most cases, I don't think so. But actually, at an outreach event with our alumni on Friday, we discussed this topic, and there were actually quite a lot of dissenting views on this. So some did say, for example, having more fringe views as part of the debate might actually be really interesting for researchers. So perhaps you could also tell me what you think about this. And it's a potentially quite controversial issue. So welcome your feedback. One thing I'd also be really interested to hear from you on is how you engage the hard to reach. I think there are really great ways to do this. And I've had success with this in the past by perhaps smaller, longer term, more targeted engagement projects with specific stakeholder groups. to ensure that they always co-design at least some of the future activities. But I'm also always keen to hear about how others approach this particular issue. So I thought I'd also share my thoughts on how this kind of function will develop going forwards. I think, there's long been a move away from pure communication of science. It's much more of a two-way conversation. And as I mentioned, I think there's a greater drive for targeted involvement by stakeholder group. This is currently my strategy. So to involve stakeholder groups in designing those activities. I suppose it will also mean being a bit stricter at analysing whether we have actually fulfilled our purpose. And we need to always ask ourselves, have we truly facilitated dialogue here? So to keep changing quite iteratively our approach and put that knowledge back into the way we work. I also think there'll be a greater need for local to global collaborations, which should be critical for this kind of outreach going forward. Perhaps similar to the HD Forum on a local scale, perhaps joining forces with other comparable institutions on a global scale, and on the other end of the spectrum, targeting specific stakeholder groups, say patient groups for a genetic testing event, for example. So finally, I'd like to quickly wrap up with a case study of science and society in action. This clearly fits in with our fifth theme of planet. And we started with the internal analysis, and now we've progressed to an external outreach event. So this is for our flagship Science and Society conference. Every year we normally welcome hundreds of people onto our campus, but the theme is different every year. So last year we had science as a means of storytelling. The year before that we had infectious diseases, and next year we'll be looking at the One Health movement. So this year we're focusing on mass extinction and scientific and societal responses to that issue. Of course, this year will be online. And at the conference, we'll hear about measuring loss of biodiversity across ecosystems and across scales, and we'll also focus on scientific and societal responses to mass extinction. We have about 20 speakers in total, and we'll explore a variety of perspectives, and you can see some of those examples here. And we really will discuss whether there are any innovative scientific and technological and of course societal solutions to counter loss of biodiversity. We have sessions on building green, bioremediation, rewilding, seed banks, political solutions, you name it. So we've got a really fantastic agenda planned, and as it is virtual, the main silver lining is that we can make this much more accessible. And this is where I need all of you. I believe that true dialogue happens when we have a real spread of voices who are part of the conversation and have a seat at the table. So please sign yourselves up to this conference. The deadline is the 14th of October, and also spread the word. It's a 2-day conference, completely free to high school students, and a flat fee of €20 for everybody else. So I'm now going to hand back over to Matt, who I hope will be able to play a short video from one of our speakers from the conference. And after that, I'll go straight to questions. So thank you very much for listening.
This is Victor Delorento from Madrid, and I really encourage you to become involved in the event that is being organized in EMBL Heidelberg on how science and molecular biology in particular can help addressing some of the most pressing problems that we face as society and as humanity, and namely how to deal with climatic change and how to deal with the impact that our activities have in the entire biosphere. So for a long time, molecular biologists have been interested mainly in the small world, but now in the last few years, we have the capacity to really address with the tools that come from advanced biology, advanced science, advanced systems biology, synthetic biology, many of the issues that so far were intractable. And I hope that this discussion will open the window for new actors and new partners to really become involved in this big mission about restoring our environment and making our planet a livable place.
Thank you, Lucia. That was a really nice talk. We do have a few questions. I want to start with, you used the term external stakeholders several times. Can you tell us sort of give us an idea of specifically who you're referring to when you say that?
That's really the $1 million question. I would say that, I mean, generally there is no one general public, no kind of one group of external stakeholders. When I talk about external stakeholders, I suppose it, you know, really is bespoke for every single theme, the geographical area, and what we want to achieve. So, I mean, if we were to look at the planet theme and this specific Science and Society conference, we have had a big focus on young people, and we have also been working with our ELS team that we've been talking about. They've got a fantastic platform to engage with schools, for example, and already have a school ambassador program. But it might also mean listening to other comparable views in conservation, in other sort of societal solutions and beyond. And that's important for us because we have an internal committee called Green EMBL, which will really take all of this on board and then form its own EMBL view of you know, our direction going forward. So it's really a circular process. We look at each specific topic and then plan the stakeholders accordingly.
Thank you. So you also mentioned that most or many of the events are open to the public. So I'm wondering, is there some sort of application or evaluation process, or is it just a completely open, you know, registration for the public?
Oh, you mean, can anybody attend?
Yeah.
Absolutely, anybody can attend. And, you know, I suppose, as you've mentioned, the one silver lining of this current pandemic has made it far more accessible to people all over the world. Normally, we do have completely open and free to attend events on each of the EMBL sites. And we record most of those. So you can look through the back catalogue online. And if there's anything that for some reason doesn't work or you don't have access to, then get in touch with me and we'll try and, you know, make sure that you have access to that.
So then a follow-up question there is, I think that sometimes in meetings, there's like an inverse relationship between the number of participants and then the quality of the discussion or the utility of the discussion. So is there a limit to the size of these meetings, or have you found ways to really enhance the quality and utility of the dialogue even with lots of people?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, you know, it really depends on what we're trying to achieve. I mean, the conferences are also are clearly intended to reach as many people as possible. We have lots of breakout rooms at the sessions, but the idea there is to, you know, get as many people here to facilitate dialogue on site. With the smaller sessions, if I were to do a focus group or a round table, those numbers come way down. I think even the intern seminars are capped at around 50, 60, to really ensure that people are able to, you know, have their voices heard. For focus group, for me, it's about 10 max. So it does depend on the kind of activity we're doing.
Sure, that makes sense. And then a related question from one of our audience members is, how is the feedback from these dialogues with the public actually integrated into the strategic direction of the organization?
Good question. So, you know, I think one thing to make clear is that when we're talking about public involvement, it's certainly not about setting our research agenda, for example. I think where it's much more useful is to ask specific stakeholder groups. So say we were talking about a patient group, for example, on how the best kind of communication methods for them. So I think what we're planning to do, and particularly just at the moment, actually, we are planning a new methodology for incorporating audience views. I think there's going to be some kind of audience panel. That will then completely change the way that we plan events and outreach activities. And that is the future, really, of that kind of collaborative dialogue that I spoke about.
So how are the topics that you focus on and the, say, invited presenters or discussants, how is that selected or decided?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have this internal Science and Society committee. So we have a lot of scientists on that, from pre-doc right up to group leader level. But we also have a lot of admin staff, non-scientists, who work in a lot of different fields, and they all work together as a bit of an internal think tank to select topics, to build a narrative of the kind of things that we are interested in. And just to give you an example, we had a pretty good idea of where our conference was going to be next year, and then COVID happened. So we were then, having to go back to the committee and internal experts to say, should we adapt this a little bit more to the current situation? And that's what ended up happening.
Right, that makes sense. I think we're a little bit over, so I think we're going to end it now. But I want to once again thank you both, Janet and Lucia, for your excellent presentations today. We really enjoyed them. I also want to thank the audience for joining us. I encourage you to go over to the webinar chat and click on the link for our Slack community, where Janet and Lucia promised me they would be after the seminar to answer any of your questions or to engage in further discussion. And I also want to encourage everyone to join us again next Wednesday, where we will hear from two speakers from the Institute of Infectious Disease and Molecular Medicine at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. And those speakers are Thomas Scriba and Chaleka Mpande. So I hope to see you then, and thanks everyone.